Hello everybody and welcome back to Comet Sighted. Trying to get through the backlog of Dev Diaries for Imperator Rome here. There have been a number of long ones and I haven't had a lot of time to do this recently, so we're going to try to get through these kind of quickly to catch up to the current date. Last week we talked about North Africa and national ideas. Today I will be going over the economy and Egypt. And right here, you could tell that Egypt looks like it's going to be a rather important region. The Nile Delta is pretty densely populated with cities, and I like that you could see the pyramids as they would have appeared at the time period and not the way they look in modern times. Actually, a lot of people don't know that they were clad in a more sheer white, I think it was marble, and capped with a solid gold cap, I guess. Well, anywho, that's besides the point. Let's move on. The main way you have to control your finances in Imperator will be through your economic policies. As described in an earlier developer diary, the main focus of income over time in Imperator will be taxes, which are generally produced by slaves, and commerce, which is generated by trade and enhanced by citizens. To modify these, you have economic policies. 3 of these are for your main sources of income, and 4 of them are for your main running expenses. Each category in turn has 3 different settings, and they can all be changed at any time. Generally, all settings apart from the default ones come with a drawback as well as a bonus. The expenses of a country will be mostly familiar with our other games. You pay for maintenance of your armies, navies, and your fortifications. In addition, Imperator has other types of expense. Wages. Every office or job in your country has a defined wage. A wage is always a certain percentage of your income. How high, dependent on the office it is, a ruler gets to lift an amazing 5% of the country's total income. Wow. Character corruption further modifies their wage, the wage of office holders. Well, that's interesting. That scales directly with your economy, so there's no getting around those. And here are our economic policies for income taxes. Modifies incomes from taxes. Lex taxation, minus 25% national tax modifier, and minus 1 national unrest. Default taxation of no modifiers. Harsh taxation, 25 slave output, and minus 20% research production. Commerce modifies income from commerce. Transaction taxes, plus 30% commerce income modifier, and plus 4 slaves needed for surplus trade good production. Trading permits is in the middle, no modifiers, and free trade, minus 20% income and plus 1 trade route per province. I really like this positive negative thing here because it definitely allows you to tweak. It feels like the game so far in Imperator looks like it's going to allow you to tweak the way your military, your economy, and your country run very, very interestingly. And let's see, tributes. Modifies how much you expect your subject states to pay you. Lacks tribute, 33% tribute from subjects. Subject opinion plus 50, so they pay less, 1/3 less, but they like you more. Defaults, no modifiers, and then you can just extort the crap out of them. Plus 25%, but they hate you by minus 100. Economic policies for expenses. Army maintenance, we have decreased pay, morale down, and maintenance down. And increased pay, morale up, and maintenance up. Fleet maintenance is basically the same thing. Maintenance modifier down and morale down. And naval maintenance up and morale up. Fort maintenance. The cost to maintain all the forts in your country. Ignore the garrisons. Garrison maintenance goes down. Minus 95% garrison size and minus 90% fort defense, which basically means you could just walk right into them. Or improved fortifications, plus 50% maintenance, plus 25% size, and plus 25% fort defense. So that seems like a EU4 equivalent of just mothballing your forts and then, putting the garrisons back in them at the top of a war. And wages. We have reduced wages, minus 25% monthly wages for all characters, but they lose loyalty, or increased wages, plus 50% wages for all characters and increased loyalty. Deficit. Should your country at any time find itself running a deficit, this will result in a number of bad things. These can be seen at the bottom of the screen under the balance itself. Some of these events may well help you turn your economy around, but none of them come without a high price to be paid in form. Money is not the only currency you make use of to play Imperator. Many things instead come with the cost of military, civic, oratory, or religious power. At times you may find yourself lacking the type of money you want, or with enough power but no gold. For that matter, sometimes you are in an emergency situation and need gold at all costs. In Imperator, you could always, for a harsh exchange rate, spend money to buy power points that you lack, or turn surplus money into power. Or power into money. Well, that's interesting. There's like a market for conversion there. I mean, that exists to a point in games like EU4, where you can spend points to help out your economy. You can, it's mostly admin points to lower inflation, or you can debase your currency and then pay to get that away in various forms. But that seems to be a more well, it says harsh exchange rate, so like 10 to 1, I'm going to say, exchange rate there. But anywho, now we're going to move on to Egypt. That is all of the gameplay stuff for the day. It's just the economy things, and a lot of it is just everything's going to be set to 0, and then you can turn it up 1 notch or down 1 notch, which is it's going to be a lot of peace/war stuff. There's not like the one I kind of look at the most is the commerce one here. This one right here, because trade is going to be so important. So, like this one, you get less income, but you get a trade route, which means you can pop an extra strategic resource. This one means you get more money, but you're going to be producing less surplus goods because you need more slaves to do it. I've been focusing a lot on trade because it seems like it's going to be a very important aspect to the game. But anywho, on to Egypt here. Egypt is a very large region, one integral to the period we cover, due to the particularities of Egyptian geography, where population is mostly consecrated. I was just playing Stellaris and consecrated a planet, where population is mostly concentrated to a thin strip along the Nile. I will today be using 2 terrain map mode screenshots for each section. So this looks like it's just the normal terrain map mode. You can easily see the Nile Delta and the river. And it looks, yeah, this is the same one. And then this is the country one. Here we go. All right. Few countries have an extreme social geography as Egypt. The Delta is one of the most fertile places on the planet and has often been referred to as the granary of the Mediterranean. But this lush agricultural landscape transformed into desert in an instant as soon as the Nile is no longer near. While Egypt is among the most populous regions in the game, it is also one where almost all the wealth and people are concentrated to a small area. Easy to control, but also potentially easy to invade. Sometimes that has been tried more than once during the many wars of the successors already. Something that has been tried more than once by the successors already. Egypt is also home to a cultural and religious world that is far older than those currently fighting over its soil. In 304 BCE, this is a culture that still lives and thrives. While the country has been under Greek rule ever since its conquest by Alexander the Great, it is by no means simply a Greek country. Increasing numbers of Greek settlers are worshiping not only their old gods, but also the old, and in some cases, new gods of the Egyptian people. Something a lot of people don't know is that Cleopatra, the famous, Egyptian queen, was not Egyptian. She was Macedonian. Starting countries. Egypt, obviously. The partition of Babylon awarded Egypt to Ptolemy, one of Alexander's most trusted men and oldest friends. As this was one of the wealthiest regions in the Mediterranean, perhaps the entire world, this made Ptolemy the richest of the successors by far. But compared to many of the other successors, Ptolemaic strategy has been cool and calculated rather than bold or even rash. With some few exceptions, like a siege of the cataphalque that held Alexander's body on its way home to Macedonia, Ptolemy has played a more conservative game. The great wealth of the Nile has been spent building new armies, forging alliances in Greece and the Aegean world, as well as inviting prominent scholars, philosophers, colonists, and warriors from the greater Greek world to settle in the young kingdom. From a very early time, the Ptolemies also started to adapt the local Egyptian forms of kingship. using the title pharaoh and actively funding and encouraging the growth of syncretism of Egypt and Egyptian religion, such as the cult of Isis and Seraphis. In many ways, this strategy has been a fruitful one. Given that most of its subjects are non-Greek, the Ptolemaic kingdom is reasonably stable. Foreign invaders have also been repelled more than once. However, when Ptolemy himself finally embarked on his great power play to invade Greece with an enormous fleet and great army, he found the Greek cities disinclined to welcome him. A short time after, the Ptolemaic fleet was destroyed at the Battle of Salamis by Phrygian forces under Demetrius. Despite his shattering defeat, a strong friendship with the Seleucid Empire and the unthreatened homeland means that it is likely only a matter of time before Egypt can act again. As the game starts, Egypt is allied to the Seleucid Empire, and it has no navy. As Egypt will be able to spend your wealth financing great projects such as the construction of its famous lighthouse, as well as the fabled Museum of Alexandria. How ambitious you aim to make it is, of course, up to you. That is a lot about Egypt, but it looks like it's basically in a strong position at the start of the game. Cyrenaica, a small state on the coastline west of Egypt. Cyrenaica, I don't know if I'm saying that right, is home to a number of reasonably affluent Greek cities, and in its time, it was also a center of learning and culture. On the other hand, it has historically often been subservient to Egypt. Cyrenaica was one of the first places attacked by Ptolemy to consolidate his rule over Egypt and placed under the rule of the Macedonian commander Ophelus. 4 years before our start date, however, Cyrenaica entangled in the designs of Agathocles of Syracuse, who implored them to help in his African campaign against Carthage. Ophelus was swayed and sent an army to aid Agathocles, only to be killed by him when he arrived. The cities of Cerentia, I want to say Cerentia, but that's someplace else, have used this opportunity to seize their freedom once more. The Ptolemies in Egypt, entangled in their own conflicts in Greece and Syria, have not sent an expedition to reclaim the region. In 304 BCE, Cerentia is independent and unaligned. So we basically are working with this and this. Upper Egypt and Nubia. This Upper Egypt, I think, is going to be an interesting place to play. Because you would have the Nile Delta up here, and then Upper Egypt, because Nile flows south and north. Upper Egypt is south. As we progress up the Nile River itself, remains the main center of civilization, habitation, and transportation. A number of oases, mining colonies, and caravan routes exist, and are vital for anyone wishing to benefit from this region, which is rich in gold, gems, and marble. But politically, the way to control it is the river. Upper Egypt is also a region where we increasingly run into the Nubian people that in centuries past have adopted many aspects of Egyptian culture and for a period even ruled the entire region. Kush, large Nubian kingdom south of Egypt ruled by the ancient city of Meroe. Kush is far from the Nile Delta and the core of the Ptolemaic Egyptian state, but is still the most credible threat to control Upper Egypt. Kushite invasions have been a constant factor in Egyptian policies ever since they were ousted from control of the Lower Nile centuries ago. Lemnia, a tribal Nubian kingdom east of Kush, Lemnia starts independent and unaligned. And I'm not, oh my god. Oh boy. I'm just going to call this next one dodecahedron because I've got a bunch of dice on my desk next to me right now. Traditionally, the region on the border of Kush that has been given as donations to the temple of Sain, Philae, and Elephantine, the dodecahedrons act as a military border zone with great autonomy under the leadership of the priestly Egyptian families for centuries, both under Ptolemaic rule and before, and when Ptolemy II expanded Egyptian control further south, it is also entrusted to this state. At the start in 304, dodecahedron is an Egyptian client state. And then apparently we're moving north to Crete as well. Crete is not the primary concern of any of the great powers in conflict around the Mediterranean. Too large to conquer easily, and yet too unimportant for a major campaign. They instead focus their naval intention on Cyprus, Rhodes, and the many small islands of the Aegean. The island is divided between a number of smaller states, each with its own allies and ambitions. The ancient power center of Knossos remains the most influential power on the island, but it's being increasingly challenged by other states such as Gortyna. In many ways, it's its own microcosm, locked in its own frequent minor conflicts and rivalries with outside powers frequently stepping in for a short time to aid one side or the other. The island also grew to be a bit of a pirate haven during the general time of conflict in the Mediterranean. Unlike in other parts of the Greek world, the island would remain divided for a long time without forming any of the otherwise so characteristic city leagues that other Greek states used for protection. It would remain this way until the entire island exploded in conflict late in the 2nd century BCE in the Lydian War, which drew in outside powers like Macedon, Rhodes, and many of the Greek city-states of the mainland. I actually think Crete would be really fun to play as in like a multiplayer game or just a single-player game. You know, try to unite the island to become this little power in the center of the Mediterranean there. But anywho, we have Knossos, autocratic monarchy in central Crete, the oldest and traditionally the strongest state on the island. In the past, Crete has often been under Egyptian influence, and it is of the Ptolemies of Egypt that the ruler of Knossos looked for help. At our start, Knossos is independent and allied to Praesos. Gortnia, Democratic Republic on the southern central part of the island, rival of Knossos, but also in the past an ally with its own ambitions. Eleutherna, small city-state just west of Knossos. Historically, the Lydian War would erupt due to the city accusing Knossos of murdering their ruler. Eleutherna starts as a feudatory of Knossos. Kydonia, small plutocratic republic in western Crete. Polyrrhenia, small aristocratic republic on the far western tip of the island. Tara, republic between Polyrrhenia and Gortnia, and an ancient religious center on the island. Europtra, I don't know if that one's right. Small Cretan city-state in the southern eastern area of Crete, frequently accused of harboring pirates. Praesos, plutocratic republic on the eastern tip of the island, and Lytios, very old, influential oligarchic republic on the northeastern side of the island, neighboring Knossos. I actually really think that Crete, you know, like I said before, it could be a very fun place to play. It could also be a situation, like if you're playing EU4 in like Japan or Central America or something like that, where there's a lot of small people and you might end up sitting around waiting for wars, you know, AI wars to break out so that you can take advantage of the situation. It might end up being like that, but you never know until you play. But anywho, that's it for the day, everybody. We looked at economic policies, which seemed pretty simple. We scroll back up here, basically just an up-down center toggle kind of situation. And then we looked at upper, lower Egypt and Crete, which I thought was all very interesting looking. Egypt is kind of, I generally prefer to play like small weak nations that build into power rather than big ones, but I'm sure when Imperator comes out I'll play a lot of different things. But in this particular one, I found Crete very interesting and Kush very interesting. So anyway, thanks for watching, everybody, and I will see all of you next time.